Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Indie Hour. This is a weekly show on GMG where we spotlight new, upcoming, small print, boutique, and just one-person show games that you might not have heard of. There are a ton of miniature games out there in the world of tabletop gaming, and this show basically is brought to you by the GMG patrons for us trying to highlight and show them all off. We have a special episode this week because this is my longtime friend and one of the very first games we ever played on the channel that was an indie game. This is Joey McGuire's wonderful This Is Not a Test. You can see we played a ton of this back when the channel was very young, and so was I. This is a wonderful game. Oh geez, this is not the transition I wanted here. This needs to go down like that. There we go. So you guys can see we played a ton of this with his actual miniatures way back when in like probably 2015, 2016. Like it was it was one of the OG games I think on GMG, and definitely a fan favorite too. People loved this game. So you can see we had mutants from his mutant collection, we had the Road Wardens from the Road Warden collection, and we played a whole playlist of this called Nickel City Stories, and I'll put it up in the card so you guys can check it out later on. But this is a GMG classic, if you will, and definitely one of the GMG patrons and community's favorite games. So what is happening? Well, this game is getting a brand new, very exciting second edition, and that second edition is being printed by our friends over at Blacksite Studio. And not only is it a beautiful hardcover book that Joey's got done with them, there's also a huge amount of other assets. So a Wasteland deck, one of the unique sort of like post-game things that happens in This Is Not a Test is you use a deck of cards to have certain events happen. You can find extra bottle caps, you could find a radioactive fridge with a long dead archaeologist trapped inside of it. You could find all kinds of things in this game, and they've printed their own deck of cards. And not only is the deck of cards just like a standard deck of cards, but with cool sort of like retro futuristic art, it also has the events themselves on there. So if you draw a face card during the game, you get the special event. If you draw just a numbers card, it's usually that many caps that you're going to find or barter script is what they call it in this. Caps is the common term for what gets used here. Beautiful full color set of templates and tokens being done in hard card by Blacksite Studios. And then we've got some new warbands all done up by them as well in resin. So some of Joey's old classic warbands are around too, I think still on his site. But look at these beautiful new warbands. We've got the Lawmen, which are great looking, all in resin. So these are basically dudes who they're like a bunch of peacekeepers. We've got some mutants. You got to have degenerate mutants in your game. And a lot of this matches the art in the actual book too. And you can see some of it all painted up. So a wonderful set of additional assets, bespoke dice, some hard card, Raider Camp stuff, all the Wasteland tokens, because one of the things that happens in this game is a lot of the scenarios use special tokens to dictate things that you might find in the Wasteland. So things like gas clouds, radioactive pools, bits and pieces like that. The Biscuit Box, which is the local 5 and dime, I guess, the retrofuturistic 5 and dime that you can go and visit. Some just cool billboards. And then the Caravanners. And I actually was lucky enough to get my hands on these STL, so I'm going to print up the Caravanners to have as my warband when we play for the second edition. My favorite guy is TV Face there. This dude with he's got like the Commodore 64 on his head. His face is poking out. He's amazing. But you can, if you look at this closely, there's some real sort of like homages to classic retro futuristic sci-fi in there. And then a cool pad of roster sheets as well. So you can get them digitally as STLs. You can buy them printed as well in the wonderful resin that Blacksite does their models in. And that's how you get your hands on it. So what is in this edition of the game? This is Not a Test's sort of like ultimate edition. Well, this is going to ratify a lot of the sort of like FAQs and rule changes. Anything that Joey basically wanted to tweak or change during the course of first edition, you're going to find that stuff in here. Along with tons of new art, tons of beautiful color photography, showing off the lovely assets by Blacksite. I really wish there was a way for me to show this in double page view, but I can't in the browser window. So I apologize that you can't see that cool two-sided thing. Credit due, created by Joey McGuire, published by Blacksite Studios. All of these lovely people involved. Joey's wonderful community of playtesters. and the additional art and artists, of course, that, you know, have been contributing to over the years. This is a real labor of love. Joey built this game over years, and it's now been alive for almost, I think, probably over 10 years, close to 10 years. And so over that time, tons of people have been involved in helping out. So this is a chunky game. If you haven't played This Is Not a Test before, this is a 240-page rulebook, and it contains pretty much anything you could think of when it comes to post-apocalyptic tropes, right? You're going to get a huge background section. It is sort of generic enough that it's going to allow you to use any setting and scenario that you want. So for instance, we set our campaign in Buffalo, New York, but we called it Nickel City because that's the Buffalo Nickel, right? That's the whole thing. But you can set it wherever you want. We also set it later on in Vault 905, which was a pre-war vault in the Canadian government had built here in Southern Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, across the border on the other side. And they went to war with Nickel City. It was like our second sort of like plot line that we did. And then the first roughly 20 pages are the actual rules themselves. The core mechanics are wonderfully streamlined. It's a D10 system, trying to roll into your values, basically like your stat values. And yeah, it uses a wonderful activation system based on your metal, which is sort of like your training level, to see how many actions you get to do and what you do during the course of a turn. Now you've got tons of equipment, tons of wasteland things that happen. And this is where the bulk of the rules kind of sits. You got about 200 or 100-ish pages that's going to be into, you know, sort of like the weirdo things that happen, the kind of warbands you can create. It's about 140 pages. And then all the things that you can have, like creatures, you know, radiation cyclones, a ton of different relics and different types of armor and weapons and guns, and then the critters that you can have along the way to actually fight. So big skeeters, chupacabras, fire ants, fundral crawlers, toxic jellies, and that's going to give you just a, like I said, if you have a collection of miniatures, you can probably find a use for it in this game. And that's really where Joey's done the bulk of the work, is like the core warband creation is relatively simple. The core rules of the game are relatively simple, but here's this massive menu of options that you can then take onto the game table. And so let's dive in and have a look. The Way the World Was. This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. The broadcasters in your area, in voluntary cooperation with the federal, state, and local authorities, have developed this system to keep you informed in the event of an emergency. It's the civil defense broadcast prior to the events of the end war. And it's all from the point of view of our sort of constant narrator. There's a lore keeper, in Mad Max terms, a remember, what's the guy's name? He got all the tattoos all over him that Immortan Joe and Dementis like handed off to each other. It's a guy who basically has lived long enough that he remembers everything, and he's trying to pass on that information. It's a real Canticle for Leibowitz situation. If you haven't read that book, then you're not really a fan of post-apocalyptic media. And so it's talking about the end war. And again, it's all in kind of generalities that you can do this however you want, have whatever sort of like world building that you want for your collection of miniatures and the setting you want to create. So we set ours in like a vague facsimile of Fallout, but you could just as easily do any of your favorite movies like Death Comes to Frogtown or Mad Max or whatever post-apocalyptia you're a fan of. And then, yeah, the unknown ends the known world. The idea here that there's pieces of the world that you can go to and pieces you can't. Joey is, of course, from Maryland, and so the Capital Dead Zone is one of his favorite places to go get lunch, probably get some Chesapeake crabs. And then the Tri-State Wasteland is the area around it. Lots of like just fun brain fodder for how you want to set your own world up. And then the idea is that that's also going to inform your collection. Now, Joey has one of the biggest, most impressive post-apocalyptic terrain collections of all time, and it's almost entirely scratch built. He makes a ton of terrain, and he's gotten painting classes, painting help from tons of like your favorite hobbyists around the world. Actually, he's a good buddy of Dave Taylor's, and of course you can see that influence on his lovely table and table design. So let's talk about the game itself. Scale and basing. It's a 28 to 32 mil game. The idea being like use the miniatures that you like. For example, you could also adjust ranges and deployments if you want to play it at 15 mil, and it gives you some sort of like, I don't know why games need to do this, but they do, and I'm glad Joey does, is it gives you the permission to play the game in whatever scale you want. Play it with what you want, play it how you can. Everybody can see 360, nice and simple, round up your fractions, and then measuring is done in inches, closest point to closest point. Board size, TNT is designed to be played on a 3x3 tabletop. This is interesting. This is a reduction in table size from the original version. We used to play it on 4x4s. I do think this is better because we did spend it. This is the same reason why I think if Thomas Pierman was to rewrite Mordheim today, he would set his game on a 3x3 instead of a 4x4. A 4x4 is kind of an anachronism to the late 90s, early 2000s when everyone played on 6x4 tables. And so the 4x4 was a subset of that and was kind of considered the skirmish size. But most rule systems, you spent the first turn just running towards each other. Nothing really happened in the first turn, especially games that were in dense urban environments. So setting it at 3x3 just means you get to the game faster. Terrain density, obviously there's lots of cool terrain, dice and mechanics. It uses D10 and occasionally some D6s. The two types of dice are used. There's either opposed tests or unopposed tests. Opposed tests are used to resolve direct actions against each other. Both players roll a D10 and add the relevant stat, and any applicable modifiers, and the highest score wins. Ties always go to the attacker. And then unopposed tests are used when a model is trying to accomplish an action that is not directly contested by an enemy model. Examples include opening a locked door, getting a computer to work, or etc. You roll a d10, add your stat, and then see if the TN is hit or not. So target numbers, like if you have like a locked door and you're trying to, get through it, you might want to do something like try to pick it. You'd use your agility maybe, and you might have a TN 10 agility test. So you'd roll a d10, add your stat, you get a 10 or higher, you're going to pass. Crits or 10s are always success, fumbles are 1s, and they're always bad. Certain things can also go wrong in a fumble, like your gun can blow up and you can turn into goo. Scatter dice is usually used by using a d10, where the top points is where you're going to go. And you can't reroll or reroll. There's lots of tokens in the game. They're usually used for things like ammunition, if you've activated, stuff like that. Certain terminology. So automatic hits. Hey, it's going to happen automatically without having to make an attack roll. Out of action means you're taken out of the game. Removed from play means you should go away from the board entirely rather than going out of action. So you don't lay down like a Necromunda. Instead, you're removed. And then base contact means you're touching base to base. All right, the stat block. I really like, so this is kind of a new presentation thing, but I really like it. The little badge to the left here where you have like your core stat block. And then you have your type and then your skills. So the core stat block of a raider, move 5. We've got a defense of 6. That's what you're going to roll to try to oppose somebody's shots and stuff like that, or your base roll that you need to have. Wounds of 1, how many points of damage you can take before you die. And your metal, which is what you're testing on for activations. Then melee, which would add to a d10 to try and hit somebody. Aim, same thing for shooting. Strength, agility, and intelligence. All of those are applicable to different types of tests. Picking something up, breaking something down, trying to shoot somebody with something or throw something at somebody. And then your ability to outwit and like hack computers and stuff is your intelligence. Saves and tests. So as mentioned under the dice and mechanics, certain situations require a model to take a test using one of its stats. The rules will describe when such stats are taken and how it happens. So activation, this uses the metal stat and determines how many actions you get per turn. Agility, fast climbing, jumping, or otherwise physically dodging hazards. Aiming, shooting. Intelligence, solving puzzles, negotiating with people. Metal, it's also your morale. It's used for resisting psychic powers as well, and other matters of internal fortitude, or for spotting hidden, your spidey sense, for spotting hidden dangers. Strength, breaking down doors, and then survival. This use of defense stat is used when resisting the effects of poison, disease, and wasteland hazards. Very often, you'll make survival tests when something terrible happens on the event cards at the end of the game. So if you find a radioactive toilet and you decide you have to use it, you might have to make a survival test. Initiative phase, you roll d10, add any special modifiers you might have. You might have skills, like leadership skills, you could add to that. The highest score activates first, and then reroll any ties. The activation phase, players attempt to activate their models. Now, the metal test is used to try and activate miniatures to represent the fact that there are bullets flying around. So how good you are under fire and how good you are at keeping your cool in a fighting situation is going to be determined by that. Models make an activation test using their metal. Actions are performed by spending action points unless modified by special abilities or by rolling a crit. Everybody has 2. If you get a crit, you get an extra 1. And then the cleanup phase, players resolve any end of turn effects and remove any statuses that no longer apply. All right, so the activation test. This is one of the sort of most unique mechanics, and this is not a test. And again, it's a really cool fog of war mechanic because very often the more rules light your game is, the more easy it is to stack it basically to get a perfect outcome. So like the simpler and more linear something is, you get into the Warhammer 40,000 problem of everything moves, everything shoots, everything fights. They all do it in a linear path. You can stack modifiers to make yourself the best at doing or the best for the given situation. The activation test means sometimes your guys don't behave. even you have to come with a backup plan for even if your most like relevant piece basically stops functioning for a turn. It's a slightly unusual test, and you're going to make a metal test to try and get your activation. After you get your AP, you're going to get 2 if you pass, 3 if you get a critical. But after you've used all your AP, you can choose to make another metal to activate. Until all your guys have activated, you fail an activation test. So basically, the idea here is it is alternating activation, but you push every time you want to activate somebody to see if you get to go again. As soon as you fail an activation test, that model gets to take a single AP, but that's it. It passes to your opponent. So you basically get to go, and then you're trying to pick the right order to have guys go in, depending on either how reliable they are or how much you want to stall. Sometimes you might even want your worst pieces to fail out first so that you don't get to go again and your opponent goes, to try and pull out their activations. Horde armies will tend to try and do this. So basically, the game turns broken up into a series of initiative rounds. The player with the initiative chooses a model that's not even activated during the turn. The player then makes an activation test. Again, it's slightly unusual as the player's model's metal stat, however, is not a metal test. This is an important distinction because players don't apply any modifiers to metal tests, instead only apply modifiers to specifically mention activation tests. So you're going to roll, and you're going to try and make that activation to happen. Usually there's a TN for it. And that TN, if you pass, will be... Where's the TN for that test? Activation test. Let's just pass or fail. I think it's TN 10, but we can look that up later. And then you get your actions. You spend 1 AP to do simple actions, 2 AP to do sometimes special actions, or additional actions. 1 AP actions are things like moving, standing up, being a ranged attack, aiming or like unjamming weapons, close combat attacks, concentration, that's your aim bonus, climbing, because you can also concentrate to fight in melee. Climbing, charging, or making miscellaneous actions like that are, from the scenario or that you have on your guys' equipment. Special AP actions are things like using abilities, and the AP cost can vary. Overwatch is always 2 AP, so you can sit and try and wait for someone to come into range so you can shoot them. All right, let's talk about range combat tests. So the basic range combat test spends an AP and you fire your weapon. You have to see somebody, can't be in melee unless it specifically says you can, and then you make your attack range test. You're trying to hit TN 10, or the attacker scores a critical, then the attack's successful. A successful attack only means the target might have been wounded, and then you get modifiers for basically however the game is currently progressing for you when you're shooting at them. So for instance, you could be getting suppressed, you'd be +3 to the TN. You're concentrating, the attacker's using suppressing fire. That's if you get any hits that you make people lay down. So you get that bonus to hit, because you're not actually trying to hit them, you're just trying to scare them. +2 if you're concentrating, that's your aim bonus. -1 if they're over half the weapon's firing range. -1 if you made 2 move actions this turn, like the target did, because they're moving quickly. -1 if the target's in light cover. -1 if the target's prone and more than 6 from the attacker. And -2 if they're in heavy cover. Cover options don't stack, though. Some templates will hit automatically. Some templates will scatter. And then when you wound somebody, you have to see if they get hurt or not. So on a successful hit, the attacker rolls to wound the defender. There's an opposed task between their strength and their defense. So that's why your defense stat becomes important, right? So if we look back at, I think he was defense 5, that raider. Yeah, he's defense, he's defense 6. The raider was defense 6. You would roll and add the strength of your weapon, and they would roll and add their defense, and whoever was successful, basically, would determine the fate of that guy. So if they got wounded, they may take another action or take a wound. And if not, then it would graze them. If they fail to take them out of action, whether wounding or a multiple wound model or failing to beat its defense, the target must pass a metal test or move to cover and go prone, move up to 3 inches to do so. So you basically duck for cover when you get hit. So I like that because you might stay standing. It's not automatically pinning like old games like Necromunda are. But it allows for like some maneuvering and some like diving away if you want to. Graze model can also choose to automatically fail it if they want. Sometimes you make multiple shots. You can shoot at models within 3 of each other, but you have to shoot into a cluster, so you can't like shoot behind you, shoot left, shoot right. And then you got to randomize if you foul into melee. Same kind of bonuses in melee, penalties for close combat. Close combat also has sort of the same system for wounding. You can concentrate in melee. You can also disengage and follow up if you kill somebody. And then sometimes it's just better to run away. And sometimes you fight at night. Look at these beautiful new models. These are some of the Black Site miniatures for the Mutant Warband. I like Mutant Elvis in the back there with the banana clip on his AK. And I think Crab Hands with his Man in the Iron Mask is also fantastic. Everybody's killing it today. All right, so there's a faction entry, and we're now getting into the warband section. So a note about making warbands, and a note on fairness. Although this is not a test, can be a competitive game, the focus should always be on fun. Within these rules, there's plenty of opportunity for min-maxing and general munchkinism. There's a term that Joey understands that I'm not sure the rest of the world does today. Munchkin is a classic Steve Jackson card game where you screw over your buddies. So munchkinism would be where you are trying to gain advantage through less than scrupulous means. What's a warband? It's an archaic term, but a warband simply means a group of fighters. The enemy warband is going to be grunts, specialists, elites, and then one leader that you have to have. Finally, you might recruit some Wasteland Weirdos. These are your like dramatis personae in Mordheim terms, people that might follow you around. Warband must have a leader. You can have up to 3 elites, any number of grunts. You can never have more specialists than grunts. It's 1-to-1 at least. And a warband may never have more Wasteland Weirdos than grunts either. Picking a faction. And there are a ton to choose from. And then you got to build your warband. So first choose your faction, then you choose a leader. You can have 3 elites, like I said earlier. You're going to have to choose based upon your cost. But you can never have more than 12 guys. So warband creation is always going to be... sort of like the core mechanic of this game, and a lot like other games, it's going to be about I think it's 1,000 barter script that you start with. You can also have mutations and buy mutations, but you got to pay for everything. Detriments you can buy to make guys cheaper. You can find relics, and then you finalize your warband. So there's lots of these. The Caravanners is kind of the survivor faction, and you typically have a single type of leader, multiple types of elites, multiple types of grunts, and multiple types of specialists. So for instance, this one has the Trade Master as your leader. There were in past editions more than one type of leader. They've kind of consolidated them all into single ones to make it a little simpler. You can have lieutenants and an armored cow as one of your elites, or a tracker. And the grunts are walkers and defenders and luggers. So like brawler guys and shooter guys. Caravan guards and caravan runners are your specialists. Those are like scouts and like toughs. Your mutants, you get an Omega Mutant or a Psychic Lord. So again, 2 different types of mutants that you can have here. I had a Psychic Witch as mine. Your elites are things like an Alpha Mutant or a Mutant Emissary. And these guys will have different specializations and like customization options, like special abilities. You can choose up to 3 skills and mutations. And then you also can start with a Deparent if you want to be able to become cheaper. But then you get the special skill Killer Mutant. If the Outcast Warband was selected, this model can raise its melee stat to 6. And if it does, reduce its aim to 5. Or Stable Mutant. When first created, this mutant can choose its first hidden mutation instead of rolling randomly. Any further hidden mutations are randomly determined. So normally you don't get to choose your mutations, but you get to choose if you're either Downwinders or Outcast. Downwinders are going to be the kind of more accepted ones. Outcast, the ones that are, the big cannibal mutants. I like this guy with this Quado, his brother growing out of his chest here at the bottom. I put him up on the side of the stream too. Alpha mutants, mutant emissaries, like leader types, abominations, mutants, and feral mutants. And then your specialists are mutant brutes and psychics. And a mutant gunner, dudes with guns. You get some cool examples too. Love this Raider art. It's Maryland plates all over it, because of course it is. And again, 2 different types of leaders, warlords or bandit kings. And then you can have a brute, a raider champion as your 2 different types of elites. So brutes are like the more fighty guys, but they don't have any leadership abilities. And then the raider champions have some more leadership abilities. Raiders and wreckers, these are like your shooters and your fighters, and you can see access to different skill sets. So marksmanship, melee, and survival on one, and melee, brawn, survival on the other. Special abilities are kind of just standard human stat lines. Mongrels, you get evil dogs, and maniacs are your specialists. And then you can also have mutant raiders, so mutants can kind of like infiltrate in here, and you can have the occasional dude with a hidden mutation. Broilers, which are dudes with flamethrowers, they just love it. And scrap takers, which is your dudes that go and dig in the scrap. Look at these wonderful, I think these are Street Violence miniatures from Foundry. Classic models from Joey's collection. Preservers! These would be your Brotherhood of the Steel types. You get a Lore Keeper and a Lord Reclaimer. Reclaimers and Savants. And so you can see here they're trying to bring back the knowledge of the past. Wreck-It Box Seekers and Excavators, some robots you can take. Arbitrators and Tech Bearers are some of your specialists. And a Helomatic, a Robodoc. Johnny Atomic is on the old line radio here, the Cappers, talking about the Preservers. Tribals, so basically people who have lived like a feral lifestyle, they've reverted to like sort of more natural ways of living. War leaders and great shamans, tribal champions and beast handlers, lesser shamans, tribals, tribal warriors, war beasts, berserkers and scouts, and a warbringer. Peacekeepers, these are your cops, so these would be like the responders in Fallout 76. They've got the road marshal and the hanging judge. So the idea here is that you have kind of two ways of being if you're a peacekeeper. You can either be a, sort of like a fair lawbringer, a person bringing law to the wasteland, or you can be a hanging judge, which is a shoot 'em all and like God sort 'em out type of dude. Sort of like, what's this guy's name? The guy from Wings in that car show in Twisted Metal. The dude who was a mall cop who became a judge. Wardens, outriders, and quartermasters are your elites, and then officers, crowd controllers, and canines are your regular grunts, along with a sacrificial lamb, not Billy, from McGonagall lore. Yeah, I'm eating a sandwich here. It's just the McGonagall series of early Simpsons is one of my favorite things. And then your specials are canine handlers and line breakers, dudes with like riot shields or doggos. Heavies and cyber dogs as well. And that's it for the warbands. So I think it's 5 total warbands. Yeah, because it's mutants, caravanners, preservers, raiders, and lawkeepers. Yeah, it's 5 warbands. And tribals, 6 warbands, actually. 6 warbands. And that kind of covers all the like post-apocalyptic tropes. I can't really think of something you couldn't do with like not using those rules. You could do like ghouls and zombies using the mutants. Obviously the preservers are going to be any kind of like sort of higher tech faction. You do the Institute with them. Yeah, so like there's an analog for all of this basically. And then Wasteland Weirdos, so you can either, some of them can be hired, some of them are going to show up during the game, like giant ants might just appear during a scenario. But these are the ones that you can hire. So things like a bounty hunter, Chef de Wasteland, a Desperado, the Dependo Bot, which I have a miniature for and is amazing, a mercenary gunsmith, the Doom Prophet, or a rabble wastelander, the Dead Man, who's literally Dead Man, a rogue psychic, I like that they're floating, delusional superhero. This is one of my favorite ones. This was a Judge Dredd thing where there were people that the judges would have to keep from basically killing themselves because they thought they were superheroes from reading too many comics. It's one of my favorite post-apocalyptic tropes, and I love that you can hire a delusional superhero. It's a peacekeeper, but like without the actual skill. But you can roll, they do have a secret superpower. They start with confident and mistrusted. This model has hidden abilities. Roll once on the below table to see what it gets. Should the model ever roll a fumble during an activation test, it must immediately make an intelligence test. On a success, it comes out of its delusion and loses its superpower. So basically, you only have this power because you believe you do. And as soon as you stop being delusional, you stop your superpower. So like on a 1, the enemy chooses what your superpower is. On a 2, you have super speed. On a 3, you have super strength. On a 4, you're just invulnerable. On a 5, you have heat vision. On a 6, it's the player's choice. You can choose one. So again, the delusional superhero is I think one of my favorite things in this game. Fantastic special character type. A freelance slaver. Those are words that should never be in the same sentence at all. And an enslaved wastelander. Independent merchant. So somebody's selling stuff. Mindbenders, pathfinders, monster hunters, sawbones, and a traveling rocker. So, if you haven't seen the whatchamacallit movie, Six String Samurai, you probably should. It's where Buddy Holly fights a guy that kind of looks like David Lee Roth with a samurai sword at the end. It's incredible. Tech Knight, wandering mutants, so big wandering mutants and mutant brutes, vengeance seeker, somebody who's like lost everything. That would be like a Mad Max type. And then the Wasteland DJ, it's Johnny Atomic himself. I have a wonderful Johnny Atomic miniature that I still need to paint. And sorceresses. And then we get into like special rules, so like all the various like skills that you can have and learn. Again, we're only on page 110 or 240. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the skills, but like every skill category that you have in your warband creation will give you a subset. It's not like Necromunda or Mordheim. So things like smarts could give you things like clever. So if you make an intelligence test, you get a +1 bonus to the roll. Or medic, you can try and heal people. Survival, you can get things like hard as nails. So whenever you get hit by an attack, roll a d10 and reduce the strength of the attack by the result of the dice roll. If it would make it the strength 0, you just negate the attack altogether. Fearful Rep, Frother, Mental Fortress on your tenacity tests. And then special attributes. So these are like skills and abilities that you might have baked in. If like when you get higher, you might learn over the course of the game. Millions of different mutations, physical mutations, like pages of mutations and psychic abilities, detriments. So you could be like a slightly weakened version of a human with atrophied muscles. Unending pain. You're -1 to all your activation tests because you're just always screaming. You're the screamer pillar. An inert twin. You're just -1 to move and agility tests because you have a dude hanging off you. And then tons of guns in the Wasteland. You got melee weapons. You got a bajillion different ranged weapons. An aerosol gun. Yeah, you know when you make a flamethrower in a movie out of an aerosol gun. Or like a lighter and a can of hairspray. Modern ranged weapons like assault rifles, hand cannons, machine pistols. Support weapons like flamethrowers and LMGs, miniguns, grenades. Yeah. And then all the different traits they have. Armor is just going to add basically to your defense stat, but it can have special rules too, like combat armor and ride armor. Sometimes you get extra bonuses against blasts. Or makeshift rules, like makeshift armor, you're -1 to your attacks against ranged, but to a minimum of 0, except for ranged weapons out of the barbed rule. So yeah, your armor bonus goes down if it's makeshift. So like, let's say you had heavy metal armor, but it was makeshift, you'd lose 1 from the total, but it's cheaper. So that's kind of like Mad Max finds like a shoulder plate, but doesn't have like the whole set of armor. So you get a bit of a bonus, but not everything. And then all kinds of special equipment like flares, biohazard suits, flare guns, Globy Gun, which is your rat away, simple shields. And then relics. And relics are things that we don't quite know what they do or how they work, but like an actuated gauntlet, a power fist, a blast hammer, a chain blade, a flash baton, a force blade, a monofilamental whip or knife, and the thunder punch, which is the actual power fist. But sometimes they just stop working. Laser carbines, plasma pistols, thunder guns, web guns, zingers, Gatling lasers, plasma canisters, rail guns, airburst grenades, shriekers, and smart bombs. And then relic armor, the anti-bully armor. Surprisingly not designed for the defense industry, this armor was instead mass marketed as proof against physical assault. Corporations branded as anti-bullying protection for tech industry nerds who still suffer the occasional wet willy or dreaded purple nurple. With this armor, they could turn the tables on their bullies using strength-enhancing capacitors to give their assailants atomic wedgies. It's basically a malfunction porn sporadic suit of like power armor that can be bought by anybody. But then you can also find power armor, recon armor, and stealth armor. Very funny. Weird relic equipment like battle force fields, grappling guns. And then we've got all of our Wasteland rules. So how to play a game. Decide your limit for the warband creation. So like, let's say 1,000 if you're just starting off. Roll for your scenario. Roll for the Wasteland encounters. Play a game. Determine the winner and complete endgame sequence of the campaign. So like, you want to do the post-game sequence and see if anybody's lived or died. 10 starting scenarios: Cold Vengeance, Junk in the Trunk, Just Cause, Little Slice of Heaven, Pest Control Caravan, The Thing in the Wastes, Secret of the Ruin, Snipe Hunt, and Totally Radical. We've played all of these at least once on GMG, so just go to the playlist in the cards. You can go check them out. We'll be playing a new campaign, obviously, because this is coming back. Jay will lose his mind immediately. So yeah, the standard kind of scenarios, put the board together simply. It's taking enemy specials or granted actions worth a VP, killing an elite's worth 2, leader's worth 4, first warband to make your range attack, you lose 2 VPs. Because you're the chicken that starts shooting because you're doing the draw. Junk in the Trunk, trying to search a bunch of different locations. Just Cause. This is the one where you're deploying opposite corners, and there's like a special rule for the victory points. You're either a control freak, you're doing a grudge mash, or you're trying to like carve out a piece of the wasteland. Little Slice of Heaven's a home defense. Pest control, you're hunting rad roaches or some kind of bug. Caravan's an escort mission for one side. Cool caravan models. And get your cargo animals. The Thing in the Westland's a monster hunt. You get your creature stats for a deadly creature. The Secrets of the Ruin, another like relic type of place. Snipe Hunt. You're looking for something that might not be there. Totally radical, full of radiation. And you're going after loot crates that could have all kinds of things in them. Like secret stashes that could have relic grenades or relic range weapons. All your Wasteland encounters. This is all the things that might happen in the wastes. Radioactive zones, emberquakes. These are like the second set of cardboard tokens. That's what I was talking about in the game. I think it's these right here. These guys. So these would be for all that. All these special hazard waste. So things like your radioactive zones. Animal colonies. Calamitous storms. And then creatures of the wasteland, of which there are a bajillion. You can create your own scale for them, like nuisances, dangerous, deadly, or varieties. And you get everything from like a chupacabra to a horse spider. And lovely minis and examples of a lot of them. I love the giant mushroom. That thing tries to eat Mulder and Scully in a late season episode of The X-Files. The big skeeter, the fire ant, fungal crawlers, like again, any kind of wasteland critter you can think of is going to be in here. And cool new art for a lot of them. Great bears. Hill folk. The hills have eyes. Land snappers, giant turtles, horse spiders, mud crabs, mutant horrors that get randomly generated. Mutant scorpions, big and small, plague carriers, psychic husks, rad roaches, and rad zombies. You gotta have rad zombies. And a ravenous snakehead. Oh my god, there's so many monsters. Look at this. Pages and pages of monsters. All the way to wild mutants. And then last but not least is the campaign. So a full set of campaign rules with an endgame sequence. See if you die, see how many caps you get, do your wasteland encounters. So basic injury table, right? Dead, severely wounded, close call. And on a 10, you get more experience. Got a nice big long chart of different effects for you. What happens if you lose your leader. And then how you level up. So not that many experience to level up if you're a basic dude like a grunt. 20 when you become a specialist. You become a elite at 46. And then you gain all kinds of random advances, but you don't get to pick. And then as your warbands get more ranked, they can have different things happen to them. And you can gain different abilities and benefits. So you buy a warband rank. So Atomic Punks, they can become moneymakers. They can earn the favor of Sawbones, Half-Life Heroes, Dangerously Infamous. You earn income. And then you go and you explore. And that's where you draw your cards to see what happens. All these different events can take place based on the cards. The new card set, instead of having to read it, you can actually see it right on the card, but you get the tables here for all of those. You gotta pay upkeep for everybody. So everybody's gotta get fed. So you can't just sit on your food. You get relics. And then you play more games. And then I set reference section. It's your warband sheets. Oh, there's a pad you can buy as well. Printable templates. If you just have the PDF, you can print and play this whole thing. And a quick graph. And that's it. So there we go, guys. This is Not a Test, 2nd edition. Man, what an accomplishment. Like, in your life, writing a 240-page rulebook, that is a real thing. And this is basically the 10-ish years that Joey's been working on this, him refining down all the core rules. So really what's changed is, mechanically speaking, he's cut out all the corner cases of like weird interactions. He's done his best to make it so that you can't min-max the warbands, but he's also opened the game up a little bit and presented everything in a more clean way, where like the stat block is a little more cleanly designed. The weapon stats are a little bit more balanced. Any of the weapons in the original printing that were like misprint or stuff like that, all the errata and misprints in the original book have been cleaned up. And any interactions between like mutations and special skills that led to some like negative play experiences have been baked out of it. It's a real accomplishment. And of course, Ben and Connor at Blacksite doing what they do and making the book super pretty. And of course, providing tons of really cool assets as well, so that Joey's like game can really, I think, shine. And some cool models, because we've entered the world of 3D printing. Joey's just one guy. And the one thing you don't want to do when you're just one guy and you've wrote a miniature game is, when you have a full-time job, also run a miniature company. So letting Ben and Connor be able to basically take over the miniature production, make some cool scenery for it, make all the accessories, means it'll never be out of stock. People can get their hands on it any time. And also, if you're into the 3D printing lifestyle, man, you can have at it. grab your warbands whenever you want, have them at home right away. All 3 of these are bundles that you can just grab along with the digital rulebook, and you can be playing tomorrow. So expect to see some more This Is Not a Test. I've got the STL for the Caravanners. I'm going to print some up and get them ready to throw down so I can show off one of the new warbands. I got all these physical assets too, so you get to see them on camera pretty soon with a Let's Play. And yeah, just gotta see some folks coming in soon. Hopefully one of my other friends will be interested in grabbing one of these other warbands so that we can give them all a try and have these 3 sort of like in a brand new, I don't know, should we do Nickel City stories again? Should we do like a I don't know, like a new setting or a new story? I'll have to noodle on that a little bit because I definitely want to bring it up to speed with like current events. So yeah, if you want to see the actual gameplay, you can watch through all of the This Is Not a Test videos on GMG. And again, I'll put the playlist up in the cards here so you guys can check it out. There's a ton of games. The gameplay experience hasn't changed enough that that anything's really going to be different. You're just going to see the older assets in play and back when it was more of a DIY thing. But you'll see a new Let's Play coming up soon. So if you are watching this live on YouTube, you'll also be able to see a GMG review on Saturday of the physical assets, to see the physical rulebook and stuff, and I'll link this back so people can see the flip through the digital assets, and they'll just kind of like back to back each other. So you kind of get to see this twice, but I did want to show off like the card decks and the cards and kind of show Ben and Connor's contribution to all of this work, because I think that's important to show the black side of things and how pretty they've made everything. And we will be recording, when you're seeing this on Wednesday, the next episode of the Indie Hour, which will be picked by patrons. So if you're a GMG patron, get on Monday, jump on the poll, decide what game we're going to be playing, and you guys can decide sort of what goes up in lights. You can also nominate new games. If you think something deserves more hype and it hasn't been shown off on the internet yet, you can throw it in the comments on this week's video, and we'll put it into the poll for next week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you for more Indie Hour next week on GMG. Till then, I'm Ash.